A woman who walks alone is not lonely, she is powerful. She carries her own light even when the path is dark. Her steps are steady, not because the road is easy, but because her spirit is unshaken. In her silence, she finds the loudest truth: she is enough. True strength is not found in the applause of others, but in the quiet certainty we hold within ourselves. A woman who draws her power from her own spirit does not need to chase approval, because she already knows her worth. She understands that the opinions of others are ever changing, influenced by moods, misunderstandings, and their own insecurities. To base her value on such fragile foundations would be like building a house on shifting sand. Instead, she builds on the solid ground of self-respect and self-belief. When she walks into a room, she does not measure her presence by how many heads turn or how many smiles greet her. Her confidence is not dependent on compliments or recognition. She has learned that the most dangerous form of dependence is emotional dependence on others to feel good about herself. She refuses to hand over the power of her happiness to anyone else. This does not mean she is cold, unfeeling, or dismissive of love and encouragement. She welcomes kindness and celebrates genuine support, but she does not rely on it to survive. She sees praise as a gift, not as oxygen. And like any gift, it is beautiful to receive, but not something she waits for before she moves forward. She is self-fueled, driven by her own vision, her own standards, and her own goals. Her inner power comes from knowing herself deeply. She has taken the time to sit with her thoughts, face her fears, and heal her wounds. She has confronted the parts of herself that once doubted, the voices that once whispered she was not enough. Instead of silencing those voices through distraction or validation from others, she learned to speak back with truth. I am enough, I always have been. In this way, she became her own source of encouragement. People who depend on external validation often change themselves to fit in. They compromise their values to be liked. They pretend to agree to avoid rejection. And they hide their true selves behind masks they think others will approve of. But a woman who is anchored in her own worth does not bend to please the crowd. She does not shrink to fit small expectations. Nor does she stretch herself thin to earn love. She stands tall in her truth, even if it means standing alone. The beauty of this inner power is that it makes her free. She can take risks without fear of judgment, because her self-worth is not tied to success in the eyes of others. She can face failure without shame because she knows failure is an event, not an identity. She can celebrate others without feeling threatened, because she is not in competition for approval. Her peace does not depend on how many people like her, but on how true she is to herself. This kind of strength is unshakable because it is self-made. No one gave it to her, so no one can take it away. Life can bring storms, and people may come and go, but her foundation remains firm. She has learned that being alone does not mean being powerless. It means being complete in herself. In a world that constantly tells women they must look a certain way, achieve certain things, or behave in certain manners to be valued, she is a quiet rebellion. She refuses to be measured by society's shallow yardsticks. Her life is proof that the truest form of beauty is authenticity, and the truest form of success is self-acceptance. She shines because her light comes from within, not from the reflection of someone else's gaze. She walks forward, not to be seen, not to be praised, but simply to live as she was meant to live, powerful, whole and free. A woman who values quality over quantity in her relationships understands that life is too short to be surrounded by people who drain her spirit. She knows that connection is not measured by the number of names in her phone or the size of her following, but by the depth of understanding, trust, and love that exists between her and the few who truly matter. She has no desire to fill her life with noise just to avoid silence. She would rather have 2 people who see her soul than 20 who only know her surface. She has learned that not every handshake is friendship, and not every smile is sincerity. She understands that some people enter your life with good intentions, while others wear masks to hide motives. Time and experience have taught her that it is better to wait for real bonds than to force connections just for the sake of not feeling alone. She chooses to invest her energy where it will grow, in people who are loyal in her absence, supportive in her struggles, and joyful in her successes. Her friendships are not based on convenience or constant contact. They are built on trust that runs so deep it can survive distance and silence. She does not need to speak to her closest people every day to know their bond is unbreakable. She values relationships that can withstand the seasons of life, the busy days, the storms, and the moments of change, because they are rooted in mutual respect and authenticity. The people she keeps close are those who make her feel safe to be herself. With them, she doesn't have to filter her thoughts or hide her feelings. She can laugh without restraint, cry without shame, and speak without fear of being misunderstood. They celebrate her victories without jealousy and stand beside her in moments when the world turns cold. These are the ones she holds on to, the ones worth protecting. She knows that when you allow too many people into your inner circle, You risk letting in voices that don't deserve to influence your path. She keeps her circle small, not out of arrogance but out of wisdom. She understands that trust is precious and must be earned, not freely given to every passing acquaintance. Protecting her space is protecting her peace, and she refuses to compromise that for popularity or the illusion of belonging. Her view of relationships is not transactional. She doesn't keep people around because they can offer her something in return. She values those who show up simply because they care, not because they are keeping score. She herself loves with sincerity, not as a strategy but as a natural expression of her heart, and because she knows her worth. She refuses to stay in places where her kindness is exploited or her loyalty is one-sided. She understands that letting go of the wrong people makes room for the right ones. She is unafraid to walk away from friendships that have turned toxic, or from connections that only exist out of habit. She would rather walk alone than stay tied to people who dim her light. The absence of certain individuals is not a loss, but a clearing of space for those who will truly walk beside her. In this way, her relationships are treasures, not trophies. Each one is chosen with care, nurtured with intention, and valued for the realness it brings into her life. She doesn't need a crowd to feel loved, because she knows that love in its purest form cannot be faked, rushed, or multiplied just for numbers' sake. A woman who values quality over quantity in relationships carries an unshakable truth that life's most precious connections are not the ones everyone can see, but the ones that quietly hold her together when the world feels heavy. And so, she surrounds herself not with many, but with the few who make her feel like home. A woman who understands the value of self-reflection in solitude sees time alone not as an emptiness to be filled, but as a sacred space for growth. She does not fear the quiet, she embraces it. In that stillness she meets herself without distraction, without performance, and without the noise of other people's expectations. She listens to her own thoughts, her own feelings, and the subtle whispers of her intuition. It is in these moments that she gains the clarity to know who she truly is, and what she genuinely wants from life. The world around her moves fast, filled with constant voices telling her who she should be, what she should achieve, and how she should live. If she were to only listen to those voices, she would lose herself in the crowd. But solitude allows her to tune them out and tune into her own truth. Alone, she can question whether the dreams she chases are really hers, or simply borrowed from someone else's vision. Alone, she can strip away the layers of conditioning and discover the pure, unfiltered version of herself. Self-reflection is not always comfortable. It often means facing the parts of herself she once ignored, the insecurities, the mistakes, the fears she buried deep. But she knows that healing begins with honesty. In solitude, she can sit with her wounds without shame and her regrets without judgment. She can acknowledge them, learn from them, and then gently release them. This is how she grows stronger, not by avoiding her shadows, but by understanding them. Time alone also gives her the space to recognize her strengths. In the rush of daily life, it is easy to forget victories and overlook the qualities that make her unique. Solitude allows her to celebrate the quiet triumphs, the moments she kept going when it would have been easier to quit, the times she stood firm when it would have been simpler to stay silent. These reflections remind her that she is capable, resilient, and worthy of every good thing she seeks. When she is alone, she can explore her desires without influence. She can dream freely without worrying if those dreams will be approved or understood. She can imagine a life that excites her, a future that aligns with her values, and a path that feels like her own. This clarity gives her the courage to make decisions based not on fear or obligation, but on alignment with her authentic self. She does not use solitude to escape from life, but to prepare for it. Time spent in reflection sharpens her mind and steadies her heart. When she returns to the world, she is more grounded, more intentional, and less likely to be swayed by temporary emotions or outside pressure. She becomes selective about the opportunities she takes, the people she surrounds herself with, and the battles she chooses to fight. Some may mistake her solitude for loneliness, but she knows the two are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of others. Solitude is the presence of self. She is not avoiding the world, she is deepening her connection to it by first deepening her connection to herself. Her alone time is not a void. It is a well she draws strength from, a place where she nourishes her mind, soul, and spirit. She returns from her solitude with a quiet power. She speaks with clarity because she has listened to herself. She walks with confidence because she knows the direction she has chosen. She gives to others from a place of fullness because she has taken the time to fill her own cup. In knowing herself, she can live truthfully. In knowing what she wants, she can live intentionally. And in both, she finds a freedom that no one can take away. A woman who chooses to live authentically despite society's pressure understands that true freedom is found in being herself. She knows the world will always have an opinion about how she should speak, dress, think, and live. It will try to mold her into a version that is more comfortable for others to accept. But she refuses to shrink herself into something she is not, simply to fit the standards of people who do not live her life. Instead, she listens to her own voice, guided by her own values and vision. She has learned that chasing approval is a never-ending race. The more you try to please everyone, the more you lose yourself in the process. She refuses to measure her worth by society's shifting rules. One year it tells her to be bold, the next it tells her to be modest. One moment it tells her to dream big, the next it tells her to be realistic. She understands that these external messages are inconsistent and often designed to keep people in boxes. So she steps out of the box entirely. Living authentically does not mean her path is always easy. In fact, it often means facing criticism, judgment, and misunderstanding. Some will call her rebellious, others will see her as difficult, and many will be uncomfortable with her refusal to conform. But she accepts that being true to herself will not please everyone, and that is not her goal. Her goal is to live a life that feels right to her, even if it looks wrong to others. She knows her values and holds to them even when they are unpopular. If honesty is important to her, she will speak the truth even when silence would be easier. If kindness is her compass, she will show compassion even when the world tells her it is a weakness. If freedom matters to her, she will walk away from situations that threaten it, no matter how much pressure she faces to stay. Her decisions are made in alignment with what she believes in, not with what will gain her the most applause. This way of living requires courage. It is easier to follow the crowd, to blend in, to nod along with what is being said just to avoid conflict. But she understands that peace built on pretending is not real peace at all. She would rather deal with the discomfort of standing alone than carry the heaviness of living a lie. Authenticity also means taking full responsibility for her choices. When she follows her own vision, there is no one else to blame if things go wrong. But there is also no one else to take credit when things go right. This accountability strengthens her. It reminds her that her life is truly hers, shaped by her own hands, not dictated by outside forces. She does not need to announce every choice she makes or explain herself to everyone who questions her. Her life is her own, and her reasons do not need validation to be valid. She understands that those who truly know her will respect her decisions, even if they don't always understand them. Those who judge her harshly are revealing more about themselves than about her. By living authentically, she also becomes an example. Without intending to, she gives silent permission for others to do the same. To wear what they love, to speak their truth, to choose paths that make sense in their own hearts. Her authenticity becomes a light, showing that it is possible to build a life not from fear, but from self-respect and conviction. She continues on her path unwavering. She moves through the world knowing that conformity may be safer, but authenticity is richer. She may not always have the crowd on her side, but she will always have herself. And that, she knows, is worth more than any approval society could ever give. A woman who develops emotional resilience through self-reliance understands that life will not always be kind or predictable. Storms will come, plans will fall apart, and people will disappoint her. But she has made the decision not to let her stability depend on anyone else's actions or approval. She knows that her peace cannot be at the mercy of circumstances she cannot control. Instead, she builds it from the inside out, creating a foundation that no one can shake. She has learned through experience that relying too heavily on others for emotional balance can leave her vulnerable. People can be loving and supportive, but they can also be inconsistent, distracted, or caught up in their own struggles. She does not isolate herself or refuse help, but she refuses to make her happiness someone else's responsibility. She knows that her strength must be self-sustaining, like a flame that does not need the wind to keep burning. Emotional resilience does not mean she feels no pain. It means she allows herself to feel deeply without being consumed by those feelings. When something hurts, she does not deny it or push it away. She sits with it, understands it, and learns from it. She gives herself the time to heal, but she does not let the wound define her. Over time, she learns that even her most difficult days have the power to shape her into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. This resilience is built through practice. She has faced challenges that once would have broken her, and yet she is still standing. Each time she survives something she thought she could not, she gains a deeper trust in herself. She begins to realize that while the world can take many things from her, it cannot take her ability to choose how she responds. That choice is her power. Self-reliance does not mean she never leans on others. She values love, friendship, and support, but she sees them as blessings, not crutches. She is grateful for the people who walk with her, but she does not need them to carry her. She is capable of standing on her own, and that independence allows her to love freely without fear of losing herself in someone else's life. When life feels overwhelming, she turns inward before she turns outward. She reflects, prays, meditates, or journals. whatever keeps her grounded. She asks herself what she can control in the situation, and she focuses her energy there. She has learned that resisting reality only increases pain, so she accepts what she cannot change and works on what she can. This mindset keeps her from being swept away by panic or despair. Her resilience also means she has boundaries. She knows when to walk away from toxic situations, when to say no to what drains her, and when to protect her energy. She understands that her mental and emotional well-being is worth defending, and she does not apologize for prioritizing it. Some may mistake her self-reliance for coldness, but she knows the truth. She loves deeply and cares fully, but she will not collapse if someone leaves or a situation changes. She can grieve and still move forward. She can be hurt and still choose hope. She can lose something and still be whole. Through every challenge, she becomes a living reminder that strength is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to rise again after each fall. Her emotional resilience is not about being unshakable. It is about knowing that no matter how hard the ground shakes beneath her, she will always find her balance again. She does not wait for someone else to rescue her. She rescues herself. And that is why she can face life's uncertainties with steady eyes, knowing that while she cannot control the storm, she can always control her anchor. A woman who understands freedom through boundaries knows that true independence is not about saying yes to everything. It is about having the strength to say no when it matters. She is clear about what she will and will not allow into her life. These limits are not walls to keep the world out. They are gates that ensure only what nourishes her peace, energy, and values can enter. She knows that without boundaries, even the strongest person can be drained, distracted, or led away from their own path. She has learned, often the hard way, that not everyone respects unspoken limits. If she wants to protect her well-being, she must be clear about where she draws the line. Whether it is about how much time she gives, how she allows others to speak to her, or how she spends her emotional energy, she honors those limits without guilt. She understands that saying no to one thing often means saying yes to something more important: her own growth, rest, and priorities. Boundaries are not a sign of selfishness. They are a sign of self-respect. She refuses to let others dictate how she lives, what she believes, or how much of herself she must give. She knows her worth, and because she values her own time and energy, she will not waste them on situations or people that bring only negativity or chaos. Her boundaries protect her from being pulled into unnecessary drama or carrying burdens that are not hers to bear. Her freedom comes from the fact that her choices are intentional. She no longer says yes just to avoid conflict or out of fear of disappointing someone. She says yes when it aligns with her values, her energy, and her goals. This means she can give fully and generously without resentment, because she knows she has chosen to do so. In the same way, she can decline without shame, because she trusts that she is acting in the best interest of her well-being. Setting boundaries also gives her the space to hear her own thoughts. Without constant demands from others, she can reflect, create, and live at a pace that feels right to her. She is not caught in the endless cycle of overcommitment and exhaustion. Instead, she has the mental clarity to pursue the things that truly matter. Whether it is her work, her passions, or simply time to rest and recharge, she is aware that some people may not react well to her boundaries. Those who once relied on her to give without limit may push back, accuse her of changing, or try to guilt her into old patterns. But she stands firm, knowing that protecting her peace is not up for negotiation. She is willing to lose connections that depend on her having no limits, because she knows such relationships are not built on mutual respect. Her boundaries also strengthen her relationships with those who remain. When people know where she stands, they can trust her yes and respect her no. She builds connections that are healthier and more balanced, where love and care are given freely, not out of obligation or fear. This creates space for honesty, mutual understanding, and real support. By protecting her independence through boundaries, she gains the freedom to live in alignment with her true self. She can choose her commitments, design her days, and spend her energy on what brings her joy and purpose. She can walk away from what drains her and toward what inspires her. This is not because life is free from challenges, but because she refuses to let her life be controlled by demands that do not serve her. Her boundaries are a quiet but powerful declaration her life is her own. She decides how she spends it, who she shares it with, and what she allows to shape it. And in that choice she finds the deepest kind of freedom. The freedom to live fully, without apology, in the space she has created for herself. A woman who walks alone is not walking in isolation. She is walking in power. She has learned to draw strength from within rather than chasing validation from the outside world. She chooses depth over numbers in her relationships, finding richness in a few true connections rather than scattering herself among the many. She embraces solitude not as emptiness, but as the space where she meets her truest self. She lives authentically, even when the weight of society's expectations presses against her, refusing to trade her truth for approval. She faces life's storms with a resilience born from self-reliance, steady in the knowledge that she can anchor herself no matter how rough the seas become, and she guards her peace through boundaries that protect her freedom, ensuring she can live in alignment with her own values. She does not walk alone because she has no one beside her. She walks alone because she knows she can. And in that knowing lies her greatest strength, the courage to live life on her own terms, unshaken, unafraid, and entirely free.